Welcome to Magma Classroom. In our previous lesson with Udi Kalmanovitz, he covered the basics of creation and stylization for the head of a character. In this episode, we'll be expanding into workflow tips and techniques for creating hair. Now, I'm sure most of us can agree that visualizing and defining hair is an incredibly challenging process to execute successfully, but Udi's a master educator and artist who has a ton of amazing information to share and help you successfully achieve high-quality results. So get those pens ready and stay tuned. Hello and welcome everyone to Magma Classroom. Thank you all for tuning in. First, I'd like to introduce our master lecturer, Udi Kalmanovitz. Udi, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. Just getting my day started over here, and I know you're wrapping yours up here pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. That's strange, right?
Yeah, indeed. I always love the time changes, but different strokes out here. The lesson for today, as we just kind of highlighted in the intro, for those rewatching, we are talking about hair today. Udi's got a lot to cover, and I want to jump into a few things before we go into the lecture itself. Number one, if you're going to be participating, for those that are watching now, I will be dropping information into the chat as well, but in the YouTube description, you'll see the steps to follow to join us. And we're also going to be sharing this with folks on our Discord server as well. Otherwise, Udi, take it away, and I'll be here in the background getting people started.
Sure, man. Just give me like a quick access to the layer in my canvas, and I was thinking like you said something that was pretty funny to me. Like you said that I'm going to talk about hair. And then you said I had a lot to cover, and then I was thinking like it's kind of funny to talk about hair and tell a bald man that he has a lot to cover. So yeah,
it's that was an unintentional pun.
yeah. That was awesome, actually.
Sorry, dude. I didn't.
Yeah, that's great.
I gotta be careful about that one.
That's great. That was a great one, man. Okay, so first of all, hello everybody that is with us. So what I had in mind is basically talking about like how to begin. I still can't I still can't draw on this layer, so I don't know. Maybe I need to refresh my page.
Try to refresh now. I set you as admin.
Yeah. So what I plan to do is like talk about maybe like understanding a little bit more about like how to approach drawing hair. Now, there is a little bit of difference between drawing hair and painting hair. There is a little bit of difference there. Like, so today I won't be going like too much into like stuff like shading and actual rendering. I will focus more on the structuring phase and like the sketching phase. And I want to leave the viewers with like not only a breakdown that will make things more simple and like make like approaching drawing hair more simple, like also like leave the viewers with like a straightforward process that they can follow, and like that will cover most of the hairstyles that they probably will try to achieve. So first of all, the first thing to understand, and it's actually something that is regarding like many different subjects in drawing and painting, is like the way our mind basically interprets like break down an image, right? So our mind always like processes like big shapes first. It's actually like scientific. Our mind always processes big shapes first, and then only it processes like the tiny details and like textures and all sorts of like other stuff. So that makes the reason behind, like the logic behind like approaching big shapes when we're doing composition, we're approaching character design and stuff like that, like focusing on silhouettes and stuff like that. And with hair, it's pretty similar. So first of all, the things that we need to understand is that the way we think about hair, actually it's what like interfering in the way of drawing hair. So let's actually do something, and I will actually I will want to start with like what we want to avoid, what we don't want to do. And through that I will talk about like, so what we should do, or how we should like think about drawing hair. So I will just create like a very simple head shape, and that will be like our model for the next few minutes. And let's say that I'm imagining like the hairstyle or the haircut that I want to create for this head. And like I will go like for the, let's say like the pure beginner. Usually we will see something that looks like that. So someone want to draw hair, and basically what he starts to do is like creating all the tiny hairs and start assembling the haircut he imagines or want to achieve by creating hairs. So I'm doing all these lines and I'm trying to create the hairstyle that I want. Now, it's not that you can't achieve like creating hair this way, but let's talk about a few disadvantages that this approach will basically create. First of all, like let's say if I'm doing something more cartoonish or like for comics or different stuff, and I want to actually like color the hair, like I want to give different color to the hair. Maybe I want the hair to be red or blue or yellow or whatever. So if I'm only like approaching creating the hair with only lines, the only option that I have to actually color the hair is coloring the line art, which is not much. But like the main reason won't be even coloring. The main reason will be that it's much harder to control the final shape, the final design of the hair that I will achieve. It's like starting like to build something without pre-planning. Like let's say that I want to create like a character that has like, I don't know, dreadlocks. So it will be reasonable to plan ahead and think like, how thick do I want those dreadlocks to be, and how long do I want them to be? So instead of like actually guessing while creating it, let's say I'm doing, oh, okay, I will give him a dreadlock here, and then I will give him another dreadlock here, and then I also need to think like this dreadlock will go behind this one and behind this one, and this will go on top of it, and I'm starting to create those different dreadlocks. But what if like while creating it, then I see that maybe I want the dreadlocks to be a little bit shorter. Maybe I want them to be longer. Maybe like the final shape that I'm achieving, like this shape, the final shape that I'm achieving is not the desired shape that I want, the desired size. So what I'm doing usually when I'm approaching to drawing hair, or not even like always like doing the same process, but like more the way to think about approaching hair is basically break it down into like three simple steps. And those steps are actually, first of all, and I will explain and go in depth on each steps separately. But the first step will be actually defining the inner hairline. So the inner hairline, basically what it's supposed to indicate is like, what is the border between the places on the face, the areas on the face that we don't have hair, and like the border to the area, the scalp, and the area that is actually covered with hair. So I'm actually pre-planning like this, the areas on the head that will be covered in hair, and we can actually like go very in depth on only these subjects, because like we every person like has a pattern for the way like the hairline goes, especially on top of the forehead. Like mostly the sides, I will explain later, but mostly the sides look pretty much the same, like in the pattern of the hair. But usually, like in the forehead, it will look a little bit different from person to person. So let's say that I'm doing something. Let's change this color and grab something like a red. So let's say I'm doing something like this. And basically what this line indicates is the areas, like all the areas here are supposed to be covered with hair. And it's very important to be aware of it. Like even if you don't decide to actually mark it and like indicate it, it's very important to be aware of it. Like one of the most common mistakes I see from like beginner students when drawing hair, they basically, because they are not aware of the areas on the head that should be covered with hair, they basically leave bald spots on the head without even knowing. So I will give you an example. Let's say that I want to create like this short front for the hair, and I'm doing something like, let's grab a different color. Let's take this green right here. So I'm doing something like this. I'm saying, oh, my character will have like something like this and like this, and that will basically be my character's hair. Okay, so it's supposed to be, or maybe it looks fine, but if basically I will start to think like where the hair's supposed to actually start growing, like on the forehead, and then we'll take a look on the hairline that I previously did. So what we will see is basically I left a few bald spots in different places, like this area supposed to be covered with hair, and this area supposed to be covered with hair, and this area supposed to be covered with hair. So I'm thinking like I will probably cover the head with the hair I'm creating, but if I'm not actually aware to the exact area I need to cover, so that might cause problems later. So I think like this will be the first step and the first thing that we need to be aware of. Obviously, it's very possible that we will create hair, such an hairstyle that will cover the entire hairline, that we won't see, like in the final result, we won't see none of the inner hairline. And that's okay, but I still want to be aware of it. I still want to maybe mark it just to make sure that I'm covering the head completely with all the areas that's supposed to be covered. So that will be the first step. What will be the second step? The second step will basically be creating like the outer shapes and basically defining the size or the overall shape and size, and the end result of the hair. That means, let's say I'll use green again for this one. So let's say that I want to give like this character maybe like a short, kind of long hair, but like a shortcut. And what I'm thinking is doing something like this, and I'm basically like actually planning the shape and all the curves maybe that I want for the hair. So in this way, I can actually look at the result I'm about to achieve before actually creating the hair itself. Okay, so then I can say, oh, maybe I want this hairstyle to be a little bit puffier. So I have the chance. I'm not like actually drawing different hairs and try to like slowly build uh, one hair at a time. Okay, so that phase or those steps are very crucial, not for drawing hair, basically to break down hair, to understand it a little bit better. So that will be the second step. I can also use this step to bring more shapes, also to cover the inner part of the inside the head or the face. So let's say if I want like maybe a little bit of hair coming down this way and covering this ear or something like that. So I can plan it also like on this stage. But the thing is, like thinking big shapes and not starting with texture. Like starting with texture, well, like most of the time, it will be like going backwards. Like it's so basically the texture is the like last thing that we need to worry about. We need to like establish like the shape we want first, like get the base of the hairstyle and the design and the curves and also the volumes. I will talk about it in a minute. We want to establish all those first before we going into texture. Uh, so those like the first two steps, and basically the third step will be the adding the texture. And here I'm basically like opening a new subject. Let's go a little bit more in depth about texture, and it will help us to realize something about hair. So if we want to actually create a chunk of hair or a piece of hair, then we actually need to think about it in chunks, like in masses, like in volumetric, like volume shapes. And then we will basically give the texture to the shape. So if you think like on a single, I said dreadlocks, like if I think of a single dreadlocks, first of all, I have like the big shape of the dreadlocks, then I'm adding the texture to this dreadlock, right? But I basically like I have like this big, like kind of a cylinder, a like a tube shape, right? And then I'm adding the texture. So I can basically create, let's say, a shape and give this shape a little bit of volume. So let's think about this shape for a second. So I'm actually drawing this shape and then I will give it a little bit of volume so you can actually realize what I'm imagining in 3D. So this shape right now is like a total 2D shape. But in my mind, I can actually see that it has like this thickness to it. And while I'm adding like those volume lines, we will get a little bit more of the thickness feeling of it. Right? So let's say that this is the shape I'm imagining. So I'm actually imagining a shape that has volume to it. Now I want to make this shape like a group of hair. It can be a ponytail. It can be like maybe just a group of hair in the front of the head. So it doesn't really matter if it's a big chunk or a small chunk. It's basically we're using the same approach. So I want to give it like texture. So let's say that in the first approach, like when I said like try not creating hair by actually creating it one hair at a time. What I want to show is that you don't really have to cover the entire shape with lines and texture to convey the feeling of texture. We can actually like use like the texture very sparingly and still achieve like the feeling of texture. And one thing that I want to like maybe suggest to the viewers to do like a small like study. Like if you look like on like photograph portraits of different people, you will see that if you notice like all the areas in the hair that like are shaded and have dark shade to it, usually you actually will see like it's a solid color. It's not even like, we don't even, when we look at people, we look at photographs, we don't see as much texture as we think. We know that the texture is there, we know it in our mind that the texture is there, but we don't actually see that much texture as we think. Like right now, if you look at Saul on the screen, you can see like there will be big parts of his hair that will actually be like a solid black color, boom, a chunk of color. And you don't really get to see like the tiny details on every part. And it's something that it's, oh yeah, you're looking good, man. So it's something that we are, it's very easy like to get carried away and just like automatically almost like add it to what we're creating. So think about it this way. Let's copy this shape. So I'm creating the same shape again, and I'm thinking of on the volume of the shape. But the main difference that I want to create now is I'm saying, okay, it's a chunk of hair. So let's like make the outline, the contour line a little bit more interesting. So it will actually suggest it's hair and not something else. So usually if the hair is not wet or it doesn't have like gel or something to it, so like the hairs won't be as much like solid and sticking together, and they will be like a little bit more scattered, right? So maybe I want like in the outline, maybe I want to like take out a little bit of hair here and a little bit of hair there, and just like creating something a bit more believable on the contour line, so it will actually look like it's about to be hair. So it's something very important and something that really what happened there? What just happened here? Okay, that was weird. Okay, so it's very important to realize that the texture, which is a subject on its own, it's something, texture is something that is volumetric, it's 3D, and texture most likely will affect the contour lines. Okay, so if you want to add texture to something, also consider the way it affects the contour. But basically, I took the same shape and I'm imagining like the same, like let's say, volume to it. And what I want to do now is actually creating like using the texture very sparingly. So that means that instead of covering the entire shape with lines, which will look something like that, let's say, if I'm not using like that suggested approach, so basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, this is hair, so let's cover this hair with hairs. And then I'm getting something like this. And when I get something like this, I don't really get like the feeling of the texture. I don't really get like the feeling of volume, and it looks very cluttered and very like dense. And so what I'm suggesting is doing something a little bit different, which is basically like choosing like the way we basically implement texture with by two different, let's say, categories or marks. So the first one will be the volume. So when I'm creating the texture, I want to actually use the texture to convey the volume of the shape I'm creating. So that means there is no reason for creating lines that don't go with the volume of the shape. That's one thing. The second thing will actually considering the light source. Now, sometimes when you're sketching, maybe it's a little bit early to consider the light source. Maybe you're just sketching and just starting to building a pose or a character, and you don't really know where the light source will be. But you can always change it later, and it's just a sketch. But I also consider the light source because, like, the light will actually affect very dramatically the way we see texture. Basically, most of the time, we see less texture. Where are the deepest shadows? We're seeing more texture around the highlights and the places the light is hitting. Okay, and like if I'm taking those two things into consideration, so it will help me to convey like the texture and the volume of the shape at the same time. So let's say that right now I'm thinking that like I have light source coming from probably this direction, so the area that is facing the light most is this area that is facing the light, so it probably be the brightest. It also might get some highlights there, but I won't go in too much in depth on that. So what I'm trying to do is basically starting creating like a few texture lines. I'm going with the volume of the shape, and what you will see is like where the light source is hitting, I'm actually very conservative right now. I'm actually trying not to draw too much lines or texture lines where the light source is hitting, because like I want like the density of the texture to actually convey the volume. It's like I'm almost using the texture as a shading method in a way. So also important is that you see while I'm creating like those different texture slash hairlines, you will see that I'm trying to like not repeat the exact same length or spaces between those lines. Like I'm trying to keep it pretty organic. So what you want to avoid, which is very important, is while creating those texture lines, you want to avoid like doing something like so. If I'm doing this, then it will look like too much, like it's like too much artificial. It doesn't feel organic. Like it doesn't make any sense that like we will have hairs that will all look in this exact same length and exact. So you want to create sometimes things more freely and a little bit more sporadically and randomly. So try to vary the spaces between one hair and the other, and try to vary the lengths when you're adding this texture. So as you can see here, I have like let's do it in a different layer. So you can see that I have like some short lines and then followed by long lines and then short lines again, and try to like create something that won't repeat itself exactly, so it will feel more organic and will feel more natural. So that will be like the main things to keep in mind when we want to add texture. So here, obviously, what I did is I only like created like this one group of hair, or this one, it looks like a ponytail. And it's obviously gets a little bit more complicated when we're actually creating something complete. But let's approach it one step at a time. So let's say that I did like the first two steps. I established the inner hairline, and I know right now where are the areas of the hair that I want to cover. In a minute, I will go also a little bit more in depth on the inner hairline, and I will show you basically how this pattern works or looks in different angles, because it is important to know like how it will look from like a 3/4 view or like profile view. So I will show it in a minute. So let's say I establish the hairline and I establish like the outer bigger shapes. And right now I want to start adding the texture. So the way to do it, I want you to actually imagine that you're holding a comb or like a hairbrush, and try to imagine that you actually want to comb the hair of your character to achieve the hair design, the hairstyle you want to achieve. What that means. Let's say that my character has like this front part that goes in like this angle, right? So if I wanted to achieve it, I will ask myself where I want to put the brush and which direction I want to take the brush to take the hair in this direction, right? So this direction basically, like if you're imagining that you're actually combing the hair of your character, those will be like the imaginary 3D vectors, 3D lines that will show you the direction you want to follow with the texture. Let me show you what I mean. So let's imagine I will take, let's grab purple. So I want like this part, I imagine that it goes like a little bit to the side, but also maybe a little bit to the back. I'm actually trying to imagine like if like I took a comb and I want to put this comb to her hair, I'm imagining that I'm putting the comb, I'm placing the comb here and I'm taking the comb in this direction, in this direction. So that basically shows me like, or helps me show you what I'm imagining. Like I'm actually imagining like a 3D motion. Okay, I can actually imagine myself or my hand making this 3D motion on top of the head, showing me where those lines are supposed to go. And let's say that in this part, I'm imagining that it will do a similar direction just to the other side. And probably here from the front, it will go down and then outside. So this is a little bit to the side and to the front. And also this will go a little bit to the front and to the side. So I'm actually like imagining those 3D like vectors or arrows that show me like how do I want to comb the hair of my character. That will basically show me the direction I want to take my hairlines, my texture lines. Now, if I'm adding to this direction the consideration of the light source, so I can say you can also do something that is very general, like having like some kind of overcast lighting approach, where like the lighting is basically very soft and coming from like pretty much everywhere, and or maybe just from the top, so you don't have to go too much like and complicate yourself with deciding on the light source. But if I'll take the opacity of those arrows a little bit down, and let's take the opacity of the outer line and the inner line as well, and I'll create a new layer, and let's grab black and actually start like laying down some pieces of hair. So I can like already start establishing the contour line. I'm imagining she has like a pretty smooth straight hair, so there won't be like too much, maybe too much texture or too much like going on in the outer parts. Also think about like if the hair is actually like ending in this part here. So how do you want to basically deal with the tips of the hair? Like it could like look totally different if I decide that all the hair like going to small tiny groups of hair, so I can do something like this. I don't like it very much. The reason I don't like it, it's because it's like also it's too cluttered, it's too busy, it draws too much attention. And I can actually decide to simplify something like that and saying, no, I don't have like all those points sticking out. I can actually decide that it will be more straight and cut it like more straight, and then deciding on giving a little bit texture to it. So it will actually look like a little bit more subtle. Uh, and then let's also create like this part. And maybe something like so. And right now, when I'm creating the texture lines, I'm actually following those purple arrows that I created. So I'm thinking, okay, if this character had a comb, she would probably put it here in this line in the middle, and it will take the comb in this direction, which I already like indicated. And again, you see me trying to use like not the same exact lines, trying to be like kind of loose, creating short lines, creating some longer lines, changing a little bit like maybe the density. And then I can actually go, and I'm actually approaching it again a little bit more like shading. Like I'm thinking, let's take like actually the main part of this mess, and this is the part that I actually don't want to touch right now. Like I want to actually leave some empty spaces, like some places that won't be like so cluttered and will actually compete on the viewer's attention. So I want the viewer's attention to be directed to where it would be more important. And also, let's do the same on this side. So some hairlines, some texture lines following those purple arrows. And then again, I'm treating the shape or the texture line a little bit more like creating shading and a little bit mixed with volumetric lines. And let's also create like maybe this part in the front, so it actually covers a significant part in the face. And here as well, I don't want to cover it too much, but I will probably, like underneath here, will create something that is a little bit more dense, so we can actually feel that it has like two different planes. So I have like the bottom plane. So again, I actually use those lines over here. I use them a little bit like shading. I actually think about it when if you did a little bit of like straightforward like drawing and try to shade something by cross hatching. So when we're doing cross hatching to shade, basically we make something appear darker by making our lines more dense or more thick and dense, and we're making something appear a little bit brighter by making a line thinner and more spaced. So it's a little bit like shading with cross hatching, only I'm not crossing, I'm just doing the lines. But I'm creating like something that is a little bit more dense, and then I get a darker tone underneath, which actually helps me convey the volume of this shape. And that's basically it for the steps, like a quick overview on the 3 steps. So what I will do is like I will do like a quick summarize of each and every step, and then I want to actually show how to achieve like the correct inner hairline, which is the first step, in different angles. And then I will probably do a quick demo and create maybe different styles of hair, and suggest like a few exercises you can do to actually like practice this approach. So as I said before, first step is actually defining the inner hairline. Basically, if you don't define the inner hairline, you taking the risk of leaving bald spots on your head, and not covering everything you need to cover, basically. The second step, defining the outer bigger shape, like the outer line, which will basically decide how thick, how big, how much volume you want to give your hair, and also will actually help you to design and plan like the hairstyle you want, like even like if it's little I don't know, spikes or whatever. This is where you do it. You can actually, even if you want, you can actually then take those big shapes and divide them once more to smaller shapes. Like let's say that for the dreadlock example, I can actually decide on the big shape, and I can still make this hair to be like dreadlocks. So if I, let's say that I wanted to create dreadlocks, I can actually decide on the overall shape. And only after deciding on the overall shape, I can then think of the way I want to break those dreadlocks down eventually. So here I can actually think, no, I want this dreadlock to be like really, really thick, right? And then I have one that is coming from the back here, and maybe it pushes out right here. So right now, if I'm doing all those dreadlocks, what I achieved is that I basically have a guide to where I want to put them, and I'm not basically I'm not changing the overall shape. So this is basically why it's very important to really consider like planning the outer shape and those most basic shapes at first. So as you see, I'm not really changing or breaking like the overall shape of the hair. And I just covered like the shape with different dreadlocks. So, and for me, like the dreadlocks are still not like the texture phase. It's still kind of like, it's still the same phase of deciding on the big shapes. So I'm going like the biggest shapes first, like the overall shape of the hair. And then if I want to add like those tiny groups of hair, like maybe it has like spikes, dreadlocks, or whatever. So then I can decide and break those to smaller shapes later. But I'm still dealing with the overall shape. And only after I'm dealing with the shape, then I can start dealing with the texture. And basically, most of the time when I'm dealing with the texture, that means that I'm only that I'm kind of already like finishing or like doing the cleanup, because actually when adding the texture, it's basically kind of finalizing what I want to achieve. And see that like right now for this dreadlock, you see that I decided instead of using like a solid line, I can also like create a solid line, like something like so. I will create 2 different styles. or two different interpretations for this dreadlock. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's just that you will see that there are a few approaches and maybe you can decide what you like more. So in the first, like in the front dreadlock, basically what I did is I created the outer line, like the contour line of this dreadlock, to have texture to it, so it will feel that it's not like very smooth and solid shape. It actually has like this texture kind of sticking out. So let's say I'm creating something like this, and you can see like the texture being also coming into fruition, like in the outer line. And let's say that if I want something maybe a little bit more simplistic, maybe a little bit simplified, or a little bit more stylized, let's say like I'm creating dreadlocks for I don't know, Tarzan in a Disney movie or something. So maybe I can take a little bit more simplified approach. So like how much you want to detail your texture is basically up to you, and depending on the style you want to achieve. So those are the three steps. Now let's break down a little bit more in depth how we basically mark the inner hairline when we are dealing with different angles. So let's see how this line will look if we actually want to do it from a 90-degree angle. So let's create a quick profile view. And for this example, I will also include a little bit of the neck, uh, just because the back of the hair goes a little bit to the back of the neck. So we need to include it as well. And I really suggest that you will also establish the size and the placement of your ears, of the ears of your head, because like the ear will be kind of an anchor point for us to define the shape and the pattern of the hairline. So basically, if you want to place an ear in like a profile view, just take the jawline until it meets the hairline, and then you can place the ear just behind it. Okay. So I have this profile head, and basically I want you to pay attention to this nugget of information. When we're talking about the inner hairline, like, I think, don't take me up on my word with numbers, but let's say I believe that roughly like 95% of the people have the same pattern when it comes to the side of the head. Okay, like the side plane of the head. It's the same pattern, boys, girls, no matter what. We're all having like the hair starting very close to our temple. So I will create, let's say, a more masculine hairline versus a more feminine hairline, because there are some differences. But in the side part, it looks mostly the same. So basically, what you want to do is like think of how much you want to go from the ear. So from the ear, um, how much outside, like what is the width of the sideburns, right? So let's say that I'm thinking of right now creating something like this. This will be the width of the sideburns. Now, it also very good to know where will be the eyebrow? It's actually another important landing mark when it's regarding the hair. And the reason being is because we have like this curve going from the sideburns, and it goes in the direction of the eyebrow this way. It goes a little bit higher than the eyebrow itself. It goes a little bit higher. And one thing to note, it never crosses or meet the eyebrow. So that means that if we imagine a line here, we will never see this line actually reaching this area over here. So this will be too much for us. So what you want to imagine is you want to take a look on the eyebrow, see where it ends, and imagine you're taking this line this direction. And when you hit this point, you need to make them like a little bit diagonal. They have like this relationship. And then from this point, you want to take this line up. Until this point, we're doing the same with 95% of the people, right? Like the difference from like female to male will be that males usually shave. So either the sideburns will be cut like in a straight line, or maybe in a straight line like this, right? Or maybe they have like long sideburns and then they can achieve something like this. So this will be like the difference in male. And for female, a lot of time what we will see, I will erase this just a sec. A lot of time what we will see is something that is like it's the same width and everything. It's just a little bit more curved. And the reason it gets curved, it's because like most of women that have long hair, usually they do this. Like if they are showing the sideburns, if I can see their sideburns, that means that they usually tuck the hair behind the ear. So the hair is doing something like this and it goes behind the ear, and this is like the motion of the hair. And that's usually what creates this curve. Sometimes we can see a few hairs like sticking out, like very, very thin and small hair sticking out there. But that will be like the main difference. But the pattern itself is the same pattern. So it doesn't really matter right now, male or female. I can mark the hair this way and this way. Now, in the back of the neck, what we will see is basically the hair taking like this diagonal line. It goes like on the top, it goes like around the ear. It goes around the ear, and then it takes a diagonal line. And usually where you want to end this line is like very close to the skull, like to the circle we use, to the cranium, just a little bit underneath, like go a little bit down to the back of the neck, and then you can end it like there for most people. And also for this line, if we're talking about guys, so sometimes this line will be like a straight line, and sometimes it will be like, if it's long hair or something different, it can also get different shapes. But this will be like the base pattern for the side. Now, the part that is actually different between one person and the other is like the top of the forehead, like where the hairline crosses on top of the forehead. So that will be different. And like the main difference is, let's say right now that we're talking about, if we're comparing like male to female. So let's take right now into consideration guys that still haven't lost their hair, and they have like their original hairline. I'm very jealous. So
You wear it well though. You wear it very well.
I wear the hat very well.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, brother. So yeah. So basically, if we're talking like the base original hairline, right? So Obviously, people are different from one another, but if we look like on a very general and wide like way, then what you will notice that most of the guys have a more square hairline, which means that the hairline, if I'm looking right now in this head, the hairline will be like more square, so it will do something like this. And maybe like if it has like a little bit of downwards point to it, it will be like so, or maybe it will be a little bit more rounded. But the overall shape, like from here to here, we will have like those 2 points, and the overall shape will be like a square. We will get like this square shape. Most of the guys, Sol is another example right now. Okay, so the shape will be more square. And for female, most of the time, the shape will actually be two things. First of all, it will be more rounded, more curved. And then get this, the hairline will actually be a little bit higher than most guys. Okay, like for the original hairline of guys. So usually if I'm drawing a female, I will actually take the hairline a little bit higher, and I will create it more rounded, and it will create this curve or this arch feeling to the forehead. And sometimes if you ever got to a chance to like study and compare the skull shape of a female skull versus a male skull, then sometimes we can see that a female skull can be a little bit more rounded versus a male skull that can be a little bit more angular. But the thing is that something that really adds to that feeling of a rounded skull or a more round forehead is actually the rounded hairline. So I don't want to waste time in actually going to Google and showing different pictures and references. You can do it on your spare time and actually challenge the information. But you can take my word for it for now. Okay. So this will be like the main differences: square versus rounded, a little bit more low versus a little bit higher. Now, if you want to ask like, Udi, how much higher do I want to take this hairline? So how do I know? So instead of giving you a measurement, I will actually give you another fact, which if we imagine um, a head from like, let's say 3/4, and I will use, if you saw the previous stream, I will use like the ice cube shape for it to explain something. So let's say I'm creating like this shape. So the reason I'm creating this ice cube, I want you to see like the edge that separates the scalp from the forehead. So let's take a look on this edge. This is like the important edge. Like this is the border between the forehead, right, and the top of the skull. So basically, for most guys, like the hairline will actually be somewhat on this edge. Like it will somewhat be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, or exactly on the edge between the forehead and the top of the head. And for most females, so let's say I'm creating the same pattern. Let's use this opportunity to create it like in 3/4 view. So I'm creating the same pattern. Here is my curve. Here is where I take it on to the top, right? My eyebrows will be somewhere here, probably. Uh, so this is the curve. And then if I were to create like a guy's hair, so I would probably go square. Maybe I'll create a little bit of a downward like thingy over here and create something like so. If I wanted maybe a little bit more straight, I can actually create like maybe a tiny something like so. And also, let's say that I want to create, oh, I use it on the same layer, right? Yeah. Let's say I want to create like a little bit of, I'm not sure like how to say it in English when the head is like starting to recede and you have like bald spot. Okay, so
That's pretty
let's,
much it.
yeah, that's really bald spot. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the word I was looking. So let's say that I can go here like in the center and then take it a little bit to the back here and a little bit to the back here, but I'm still like dealing with the same line pretty much, like the same area. And if I were to create a female's hairline, like a more, let's say, common hairline for female, then I will create a curve and I will go a little bit, not too much, just a little bit over this line. So basically, it's like this female hair is actually beginning or starting a little bit higher, which leaves just a tiny part of the upper plane of the head uncovered. Okay, so this will be what I try to imagine to basically like shift the hairline between guys and girls. And obviously we can actually look, there's a lot of things basically affecting, it's something solid that maybe uh, we can use like a different opportunity to actually discuss it. Like there's something in drawing and painting which we call ideal proportions or average proportions, and it's always like interesting for me to think like ideal where or
Mm.
when. So basically, when we're talking ideal proportions or average proportions, well, average proportions will be different if I'm going to, I don't know, United States or China. Okay, so we need to take into consideration, obviously, that the ethnicity and the geographic area and different stuff will actually affect like the way we conceive or the way we think about like ideal proportions. So even if I'm saying like most females, it's obviously depends on where in the world I'm looking, right? So obviously try to challenge the information and observe and study for yourself. But like generally speaking, this will be like the patterns that I came across most commonly. So
I was thinking about those ideal proportions. So, like, if you're talking about the figure, the Andrew Loomis,
mhm.
like the Marvel way, the superhero proportions, all those things for the body, those could be consistently applied across different ethnicities, but in particular, when you're talking about shapes for hair, this is a completely different thing.
This is
The
yeah,
outline is the same, but the shapes themselves need to be identified and are unique.
yo, but does it really? Like, let's say, do you really think that if we're going right now to, let's say, I don't know, maybe let's say Nigeria or Cameroon, you really expect to find the same exact proportion, let's say, for guys, like in Mexico, or like it really varies. It really varies, and maybe I don't know if it's politically correct to say, but it's actually the truth, so I will say it. Like when talking about ideal proportions, like even if we put like Loomis aside, let's go Renaissance, let's go like even like, so basically we most likely talking about like white male or white female in a certain area in a certain time, where people are decided that this is the ideal proportion because that was mostly common for them. um, So that's basically it. That's the truth.
Right. So you're
Uh,
saying that in reality, starting with these ideal proportions are nice, and they're great rules. Like you're defining these rules for the profile and the shape of the hairline and these things. These are guides to lay foundation. But when you really want to get to that master level of perfection and the variances and the differences between people, you need to go beyond these ideal proportions and move away from those.
exactly. So that they can really use as like a setting point, because it is important to have a setting point. Like if you just starting and then you say nothing is the same, nothing repeats itself, then basically you can't make any progress, right?
Right. It's
Uh,
overwhelming. I don't know where to
yeah,
start. You're staring at
exactly,
images. You're
exactly,
trying to
exactly. So
copy.
exactly. So maybe I didn't even took a look like at different canvases. So maybe I will use this opportunity and take a look if we got something, and then we.
Yeah. For those watching, it looks like we have a handful of people watching. Not as many people that we have, or less people participating rather than we do watching. So if you are watching, feel free to reach out. The description in the YouTube video has information to join. We still have another hour or so. Udi, you're going to keep going through and sketching some more, correct?
Yeah, sure. I'm
Cool. Well, then
actually.
if anybody wants to join, feel free and ping us in the chat.
Yeah. Feel free to join us. I really like what I am seeing right now. So it first of all, it looks great, and I really like the feelings of the line. So hello. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing. So maybe if I'll try to give some suggestions. So I really like the overall shapes and like with basically what you've done here. So I want to give like maybe a pointer which actually doesn't regarding or involves hair at all, which is actually like the way to connect the neck to the head, and it's something that a lot of people are actually sometimes they get wrong. So let's see. Yeah. So basically, if I were to maybe fix a little bit like this profile head, which looks amazing, I really like it. What I would probably do is take the neck a little bit more backwards. So I will make this like dent that we get here. So I will make this dent like a little bit less pronounced. So we will see this kind of dent only if like the torso will be hunched over and then the head will be tilted back. So if this is not the case, so I would probably make this like dent here a little bit less pronounced, maybe more like so. And then also, I will show you something that sometimes we don't consider in like profile view, but I would probably take and make the neck a little bit longer, like you actually like establish like the clavicle bone over here. So I would probably take it a little bit longer and down, and we'll cut it over here and start establishing the chest only underneath like this area. Now, what I want you to notice that when we look at the head in profile view, nothing covers the neck. Like if I'm looking straight forward, right now, my jaw and my chin covering like big part of my neck. But when we can see like the full length of the neck, we can only see like the throat, but we can't see like the full length of like my neck. When I'm turning to the side, then we can actually see like the full length of the neck because the jaw is not covering the neck anymore. Like if I'm in the front and I'll put my head like under my head, then I will turn to the side, then it will show us that this is like the part that the jaw is covering, right? So what happens is that sometimes when we draw the neck from a profile view, we actually, because we can see the entirety of it, we think it longer than it actually is. But then if we think like, wait a minute, the chin is this height and the clavicle bone is this height, and if it will go to the front, then I won't see like this part of the neck. I will only see this part of the neck because the chin will cover the rest. And then I need to ask myself if this part is long enough. Like a lot of time, what I noticed is that where people are drawing like a character from the front, they actually give him like the correct length of the neck, and then they draw the same character to the side and they actually make the neck a little bit shorter because they feel like it's the same length because they can see more of it. But the most important thing is actually this dent, which should be like a little bit more subtle. Now, I will give you like a way to think about it for everybody, which can actually assist. So what you want to imagine is the neck, it doesn't support the entirety of the head or the skull. Try to think of the spine inside the neck like it supports only the sphere, the sphere that you're using. So if you look at the lines that I've created right now, the purple lines, let's take this red. And what you will see that if we will imagine those lines to continue, they will basically reach like this part, and they will support the sphere. This is what they are supporting, right? Now, if I will look at the original lines of the neck, then this line goes over here, and this line goes over here. So what are those lines supporting, right? They're basically going like in a different direction, and they're not supporting the sphere. Now, what we need to remember is that we have like more mass in front of the neck than in the back of the neck, which means that if you look at the way I corrected the neck, and then we will think about the neck again, like if I'll continue this line, it goes here, I'll continue this line, it goes here. So I need to achieve like something that looks that I have like a small mass behind, but I have a much bigger mass in front. Okay, so if you only look at the way it divides the head, like in 3/4 view, think of always wanting to put like more mass in the front. And the way you can think about it is actually like I can create, let's say, a sphere. I'm still thinking like a profile view. I created a sphere. I will create like this cylinder to support the sphere. And then I will say, okay, like let's put like the mask on this sphere. So the mask will actually be a mask. So I'm saying, okay, let's take this mask and put it on top of the sphere. And when I'm doing that, I will always achieve like this feeling that I have like more mass in front of the neck and a little bit less of mass in the back, behind the neck. And the neck will support the sphere and not like the middle of the head. So that is something very important. And also, if you're creating different angles, you can use the same idea, the same approach of like thinking of connecting the neck to the sphere itself. Yeah, so that's like one small thing, and I really, really liked your sketches. So, Jay, let's see what we've got here. Sure, my pleasure. So, like when I look at these shapes, they right now they feel a little bit more like a little bit. It feels like more a wood texture. Like I feel like it's a piece of wood and less a piece of hair. So maybe that was the idea, I don't know. But like if I want to make it a piece of hair, then I want to think of two things. First of all, like the contour line. Maybe I want to change the contour line and use it differently. That's one thing. And the other thing is like trying to be like to have more variety to the texture. So let me show you something. And it's something that even like experienced artists do like sometimes without noticing. Like recently I drew like this stylized portrait thing, and one of my friends actually like texted me and told me like, did you notice the way that you put this and this and this in the exact same side? And I told them, man, I totally missed it. So it happens, but like notice like this part. So I'm looking at this, which looks the same size as this one. And yeah, you do have a small line here in the middle, but it still have the same size as this one and the same size as this one. And sometimes we're creating those like equal parts without even noticing. And whenever we put like few equal parts like next to each other, two things happen. First of all, it feels less dynamic. It feels like less interesting. It's too balanced, right? And the second thing, it feels less natural because like in true nature, the chance that everything will like fall in this perfect order or alignment is not very likely, right? So if someone like takes his hair and he's doing like ooh, something like that, and his whole hair scatters and then falls down, it will have some kind of randomness to it. So let's say if I took like lines and I'll create this texture from the other side. So let's say that I will start here. I will try to create something that is a little bit more less like you can less like track the pattern. Like let's say that I have here like this big chunk, and then I have like this kind of medium chunk, and then I have this small chunk, which is actually the way to avoid creating equal things. Like if you had the chance, like we did like a stream talking a little bit on character design and dealing with like shapes and proportion. So one of the things we talked about is like big, medium, small, like trying to divide things like in different sizes and not repeating the same size. So even in creating the texture, I can actually use the same principle. I can say, okay, I want to create, let's go back even. I want to create like a texture for this part. So what I can do, like the texture will already divide it to smaller shapes. So I can actually guide myself. I can say, okay, let's create a small shape over here, a big shape over here, and a medium shape over here. And already I avoided, and let's not make them the same length also. So already right now, I avoided creating like the same smaller shapes, right? And now if I want to actually add some few extra lines, it doesn't really matter. Like I can divide it to smaller shapes even more, but like it will already look different and not equal because like I divided like to three different size groups. So it's something that we can use to avoid, but it will be even better for like everyone practicing to try to get a feeling of it. Like try to practice and get a feeling of being more random with some of the texture you're creating, and like try to make the habit of giving attention to the size of different details, and try to avoid repeating the same spaces or the same sizes exactly where you don't want to do it. So I really, really liked what you did here. I really like this shape, and I really liked this shape over here and the way it goes back and the volume of it. And that actually brings me, it's a great segment, or leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is actually, so great stuff, and keep going. So you actually inspired me to basically proceed to another thing that I wanted to show. And great stuff. I will take a look on your sketches as well a little bit later. So I want to show you something. Like, our eye really enjoys when we give her like the clues that it needs, and it really enjoys when we give it a feeling of something have like more than one dimension, like it has depth. And like most of the time when we think about 3D, we think about volume. We think about things like shapes having volume, but that's not always the case. So let's say that I'm taking, for example, this piece of paper, right? So this piece of paper is also a 3D object. We can't argue that, right? But it looks very flat here, and if I wanted to draw it, then I would just drawing like a straight square or a rectangle, right? So when it looks 3D, so I can give it a little bit perspective, so it looks more 3D. But it will look 3D once it will either bend or fold or twist. So once I will do this, we will already, let's put it inside the frame, we will already catch that it's a 3D shape, because I'm actually seeing that it has two different sides, two different planes. I have a front plane and I have a back plane. Also, if I'm actually creating a twist, so let's say I want to twist it, okay? So then it comes 3D. So basically, we can actually take a flat plane and try to fold it or twist it to convey the feeling of volume and 3D. So that will be perfect for like creating like small groups of hair. Let's say I want to draw a hair blowing in the wind, and I want to take one group of hair and actually make it twist or make it fold to have like the feeling of 3D to it. So let's do a quick example. So look, if I want to draw like one group of hair, and let's imagine that my character is standing and the wind is blowing, and this, it has like this one group of hair maybe doing something like so, like this. So this is all one group of hair, right? And it's blowing in the wind. Now, what if I took like the same idea, but I will do something maybe a little bit more like this? And I can still have like this sticking out, and I can still have maybe like this hole in the middle or in the middle here. So basically I'm taking the same concept, but the one difference, the one big difference is that I created like a different plane. I created this plane change. And this plane change will automatically get the viewer, will make the viewer to perceive this shape as a 3D shape, because it changes size, it changes planes, it changes direction, right? Instead of actually getting like just a contour for a 2D shape. So when creating these folds and like folding those 3D planes or 3D, like I always trying to think about it as like straps. Like actually imagine that you take a strap, and you want to basically control it. You want to know how to fold it. So let's say if I want to fold it, so I have this strap over here, and basically it's actually two lines that are overlapping each other. It's like two arches. If you want to fold something, you have one arch and you're just doing another arch in a little offset, and then you need to connect the dots. Boom, you have a fold, right? So I'm thinking about it as like straps, and then I'm giving the straps the shape of this hair group, and then eventually the texture to it. So this will be a basic fold, and we can have like different kind of folds, right? So this will be like an arc fold, but a strap or like even a group of hair, I can also create it like a little bit more angular. So I can create like some something that, let's say, like folding paper, and it can be even sharper than that. It can also be something like this. So basically, those are the different kind of folds. And also, uh, uh, to add to the folds, you also want to try to create a twist. And basically, a twist is not as complicated as people may think. So instead of like two lines overlapping each other, they basically crossing each other. So let's say that I have like, and this is like the simple way to think about it. Like imagine that we have like two sides. Like I will mark the right side in a red point, and the left side will be marked in a green point. Now, for the bottom of the strap, I will just do the opposite. I will tell you, hey, here I took the green point, like the left side, and I brought it to the right. And I took the right side and I brought it to the left. So what happens then? Basically, what happens is that this line will go over here and this line will go over here. And basically, we just cross these lines, and the crossing of these lines basically created the twist. Like this is one half of the twist. And if we want to make a twist a little more, then we basically repeat the same, like the same action, the same process. So basically, I took the strap and I gave it like a half a twist. So if you basically control those few actions, creating like a curved fold, like a maybe more angular fold and a twist, then you can start mixing those together. So you can actually practice it by, imagine, like try to draw a strap and just like fold it and twist it and try to manipulate it any way you can, and basically will gain the freedom to do it like more freely when you're drawing hair. So I can actually start and say, let's start with taking this strap here, and then I'm thinking it will go like in a sharp manner over here, and here I wanted to actually go back inside, and once it goes back inside I want it to fold back down, and when it falls back down I wanted to actually twist to this direction. So that's a quick example of like connecting all those different actions we just did. So we have like the curved and the angular and the twist, and we're trying to bring it all together. So obviously, when you're creating like a small hair group, you don't have to make all the action on one hair group, but you want to like master those few like manipulations, that you have more variety when you're drawing hair. So one hair group can fold and one hair group can twist, and so on. Now, it's important to use those like 3D manipulations kind of sparingly. Like let's say if you have like this hair that has like this big lashes, lash curls, and you can actually see each and every curl curling, then maybe you will go and actually like try to really detail everything, which not always necessary. But most of the time, I think that people are, sometimes they take it too far. They basically creating the entire hair from different like small hair groups, and everything looks folding and 3D and twisting, and sometimes it's a bit too much. So try to think of it like in a few focus areas. So let's say I'm creating a head, and I'm giving like the overall shape of the hair, and then I'm thinking, let's add another hair, a group of hair here, and give it a little twist, and another group of hair here and give it a little curve. And that's basically enough, because we don't need to make everything look 3D. We just need to give the viewer's eye a little clue, and his imagination will actually complete the rest. And like most of the time, the viewer's imagination will actually complete things maybe better than we actually draw them. So we actually gain something by giving him clues and giving him like leading him to actually completing the image inside his mind. So that's something very important. So let's maybe create a few heads from different angles, and go like freestyling, and do some different hairstyle. Maybe I'll take another look on some of the sketches, see if there is anything. I really like this one. I like the angle of the head. So when you're building like the outer shapes of the hair, it basically like the line quality is not super important in this phase. Like you can always improve on your line quality later on in like later phases, right? But it is important to note that you want to be aware of like the final curves and the final lines. So I have the habit of like, I don't have like the most steady hand, and I'm not like one of those painters or artists that can draw like those really long straight curves. And I do have like the tendency of building up on my lines, which is not always great. So sometimes I want to create like this curve, and sometimes I will actually build up upon it, which is but like when I do like the cleanup or the rendering or like the final like the end result, I will make sure that it has like one very crispy line. So one thing to note is like think of the final curves. So right now, like something that maybe it would have been fixed later, but I'm thinking like maybe sometimes on few of those like hard corners, and maybe sometimes things are breaking a little bit less, maybe less in the way that I imagined they would. So I was probably thinking that a character like this, at least in the final result, and maybe this is like actually the end goal, I would believe that it needs to like receive those very smooth like lines to it, to have like this really very nice flow and dynamic to the hair. So probably I would avoid something like this. I actually exaggerated what you did there, but I would actually try to go and create something that is a little bit more free flowing, little bit more smooth. Because like if it was like, let's say an anime head, like a manga head, and then it had like very sharp lines to it, so it will affect the entirety of it, like the entire style. But it feels like a more realistic hair, and it feels like it should be like a little bit softer. So just try to take this into consideration. And obviously it's not something that we have to achieve on the first like raw sketch we do. It's just something to keep in mind. Good stuff. Let's see if we have like some additional stuff here. So yeah, so when I look at this sketch earlier, um, that was actually what reminded me about talking about the different straps. So it's actually a good example. So let's say that here, like actually the way she like picks her hair together, like in the back, give us like this 3D feeling to it. Maybe this can actually be a good place where we can add for one. I wouldn't even go for more than one. Like add for one of the hair groups some kind of manipulation to it, just to make it a little bit more like 3D like. And sometimes it can even be like this hair group taking it a little bit higher, just a tad higher, just so in the end I will get to see more of the bottom part. Like this action itself is already a manipulation. It's already a fold to the shape of the hair. That was actually a very ugly line. So let's say I'm doing something like that, and it's already a fold. It's already like I'm taking the strap and folding it. But you can also like fold the tip. You don't always have to fold like the strap in the middle. Like let's say I can start the strap like that. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually folding the tip of it. So we can always like fold the tip as well, and not only like the beginning. So I can add the fold in the beginning, I can add the fold in the tip, and obviously I can add it in the middle, and I can also maybe decide on creating a small twist here. So if I'll do something like that, I will also add the notion or the feeling of a small twist to it. And I'm only like showing on top of your sketch. It's not necessarily because it needs to be particularly on this sketch or on this character, just like going on different ideas. But yeah, depending on the style, sometimes it can be too much. You don't want to grab like every group of hair and start to twist it most of the time. Like try to use it sparingly. But it does add a lot. Like sometimes I can see, this is actually a great example over here. Sometimes I can see like a big like a big hair, and none of the small groups is twisting or folding, which is actually almost impossible if we think about it. Like what are the chances that we'll see like this big hair blowing in the wind and have everything will face the same direction? So if I have like this is one, this is two, this is like three, four, five, and all of them are basically doing pretty much the same. So for me, this will be like a good example where I want to actually change or like manipulate one of them. It doesn't need to be everyone. So let's say that this one still goes in the same direction, but on this one, I'm actually deciding to do something like that, or I don't know, give it a little bit of a twist, give it a little bit. I actually think that if it will go upwards, it will even be nicer. I'll decide to do something like so. So and that's only for this shape, and then maybe if I actually continue those different shapes in the same direction, it might be enough to actually give the eye the clues that it needs to treat the entirety of the image in the same way that we lead the eye. Okay, so let's go back to drawing some heads and doing a little bit of freestyling here. And also, guys, if you have any question, you can feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so what I will start is basically just laying down like a few rough head sketches, and I'll try to vary the angles a little bit, and maybe also vary the head shapes and proportions. So I'm going right now like very like quickly with like simple ice cubes. And so let's say that this will be one of the heads, and let's create another one. Let's put another one maybe facing in this direction. And let's create one a little bit from the back, which we haven't really talked about. So I'll actually use this one as an opportunity to maybe discuss a little bit like the hairline that we previously discussed, but the way it looks actually from the back. So I'm doing like this small dent. The back of the neck will be here. And I'm actually thinking of a cylinder supporting like the sphere itself, and then adding like the mask, the front of the head right here. And I can see maybe parts of the ear. And let's make it a little bit less distorted. So fix a few angles here and there. So we will give this one hair in a minute as well. And maybe let's create something that will be a little bit more stylized or exaggerated, which will be actually fun for me. So let's do something. So I haven't talked about like really stylizing the hair like for cartoon characters or stuff like that, but actually it's the same thing. Like maybe like the end result will be a little bit more simplified than most, but I'm actually using like the same approach exactly. So this will be like a modern Popeye, only with hair. Okay. So let's give those few heads different hairstyles. So the first thing I want to do is actually establish like the inner hairline. So what I will do is that I will actually show you the same process, like of those three same steps on each one of the heads. So we will take like the first process and we apply the first process to each and every one of the heads. And then we will take the second step and apply it as well. So let's talk about the hair from the back. What you can do is like actually trying to divide the neck, the cylinder of the neck, to like imagine you divide it to like, let's say, about four different planes. And what does that mean? How can you divide a cylinder to planes? That means that if you look at the cylinder from a top view, basically you're saying this is a plane from here to here, this is a plane, this is a plane, this is a plane, this is a plane. So if I'm looking at this cylinder in perspective, maybe I can say this is where one plane begins, the other one continues, and then I have another one here. And I'm trying to imagine this cylinder divided to four like different planes. And the reason I want you to imagine like these four planes, it's almost like we cut it like so. The reason I want you to imagine these four planes, because basically like the part of the hair on the back of the neck is like, it's like covering the back plane. So if I imagine the back plane, the part of the cylinder facing the back, underneath, a little bit underneath the cranium. So the back of the neck will be from here to here. This will be the back of the neck here. I'm already going to the side of the neck. So I'm looking at the back plane of the neck. And then in this back plane, I will actually mark this like so. Okay. So in this back plane, then I can create a diagonal line. I will go over the ear. And this will be the way I will approach like the hairline from the back. Obviously, I can use different shapes. Like sometimes if someone has a long hair, it can have like this small like point to it. And sometimes we can have like actually different, like sometimes people have like dents and different shapes over there. But like just to mark it in a straight line, this will be my approach. And also I will imagine where will be like the sideburns. Here is the curve going in the direction of the eyebrows. Here it goes to the top and then it goes to the front where I can't see it anymore. But basically I try to imagine like the hairline from the rear view. uh, let's go for this one. It's actually much easier. So let's decide that this hairline will be here, here. This will go to the top. And let's create like a little bit of bald spots. So let's say here's like this huge, like these huge bald spots over here. And for this one, let's go with like more rounded, more rounded like pattern. And actually that's something that is very important, that if you had a head facing up, a lot of time you won't see like the hairline above the forehead. Like basically we just don't see it. So if a head is looking like very angular, like looking upwards, try to really imagine if you see like this line, like if it's the way I said it, like if let's say I want to draw a female head and this line will go over the forehead a little bit over the edge between the forehead and the scalp, that means that in this angle I won't be able to see the line. So just make sure that you are aware of it. And I'm trying to think what I want to do with this Popeye dude here. So let's give him like a very, like a clean cut military style or something. Maybe also creating like this more exaggerated shape to it. And this will be like the inner hairline for this character. So this is like the first step, and you don't always have to, the way as I said before, you don't always have to like draw this line, and it's not a step, it's something to be aware of. So if you feel the need to mark it, then mark it. And if you feel like you're aware of it and you know it, and so don't, and it's fine. Like the next step will be defining like the overall shape, the big shapes of the hair that we are planning to do. So I'm thinking that here would be like kind of something not too exaggerated. He will have like his hair like with a ponytail in the back that we will probably see a little bit here, because otherwise we won't be aware of it. And let's also give him like this small um, this small hair group perfectly going out. And let's maybe go with something a bit different here. So what if we said that this character has like this Sol, how do you say in English when they use like this like is that a bow or like an art when you actually like pick your hair with this plastic, you know what I'm talking about?
You mean like a hairnet?
Not a hairnet, it's like this plastic curve when you put like on the hair to pull it back.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I actually don't know what that's called either. I'm curious to know.
Really, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure how it's called, but let's use it. So let's say it has something like this, and here I'm going to like plan that it will have like this very maybe like curled hair. So that means the hair has been pulled back this way, and then it spreads from that point or something. But thing is always like just plain the shape of the head. Like right now, I want to actually give this character this creepy hair. So what I'm deciding is I will actually cut the hair here, and I will bring it over to the side and give it a little bit of that will look like serial killer stuff.
I was thinking about it more. Would it be like a hair band? You're talking about like where you?
Yeah, it's like a hairband, but you know when used, like it's made of plastic or sometimes wood. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I keep wanting to say like a barrette, but I'm not sure if that's right.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
much.
We sell so many products in America. It's hard to keep track.
And what shall we do with this one? Let's give him like maybe a hair that is like combed to the back and has like maybe this structure, and maybe it also has like it's longer than the actual hairline. So I did mention that sometimes you can create a design that will cover the inner hairline entirely, and that's perfectly fine. Um, and let's actually lower the opacity on this inner hairline and the outer one as well. And like the next step will be actually creating the textures, but I will just do like a quick like three-dimensional arrows just to show you what I'm thinking. So like every hair in this ponytail will come from the back to the front in this manner, and it will be combed in this direction. Obviously everything is going to the back, and here it is going to the back as well from the side, like so. And only this will be actually dropping down and then outwards. That's what I imagine. And here, like the hair is beginning to go back to this like hairband, right? And then it will goes out from the hairband, and then it's basically returns to its volume and like texture. So it will have like different directions changing according to the volume and texture. Uh, Curls, it's something a little bit different, and it's actually we can treat it as an entirely different subject on its own, and it's a little bit more complex because we're not only thinking about hair and different hair groups, we're actually thinking of the different ways that hair is curling together. And sometimes curls can be really dense and really small, and sometimes they can be big curls, and sometimes they can be more sporadic, and sometimes they can be like really exact and really like perfect curls. So there are different kind of curls, and that goes a little bit more in the subject of knowing how to convey different textures and shapes with different techniques. So there's actually like different patterns and techniques to achieve like different textures when it comes to curls and things that are more sporadic and less like straight hairs going in from one direction to the other direction. So let's take down the opacity on that layer as well, and just add another layer and do like a quick. So for this character, I decided to let go of this like point in the front, and I want him to give him like this crazy serial killer vibe. I was thinking on what was the name of the movie and the Coen brothers, like no land for an old man. So you have
No Country for Old Men.
no country for an old man. Yeah, so you have like the serial killer with this like creepy hairdo.
Yeah, it's a great flick. That's a good character.
So I was thinking like maybe is a little bit shaved like in the side, so we can give like a hint of like the stubble. So he's a little bit shaved here, and he has like this creepy hair come to the side. Um, and for this one, I actually was thinking about something more like, also sometimes let's, instead of just going straight up texturing, let's divide this hair to a few smaller groups. It will actually, I think it will fit here. So I'll create like this one group of hair in the middle. And here again, I'm thinking about small, medium, large. Like I'm trying to not repeat the same size. So I did like a small size. Then I will go like with, sorry, I did like a big part here. Then I did like a small one. So here I'll create like, let's say a medium one. And here I create another small one. And here I can create another big one. And I'm just trying to like not repeat the same sizes. And also, you don't have to, like, once you decided on creating like different groups, it doesn't mean that you need to cover the entirety of the hair this way. You can actually create some groups and some areas leave like without it. It's okay. And then let's create like a little bit of texture to each one of these groups. So sometimes when you create those different hair groups, they actually look more apart than they actually are. And once you're beginning to like texture them, then they appear a little bit more like together in a way. And let's go for this one. So I was thinking that we have like this hairband over here going behind the ears. And then that means that all of the hairs here are basically tucked. And I want to like go with the general volume and direction of the hair. And it doesn't mean that I need to cover everything with lines. Like I said before, just giving enough clues for the eyes to actually complete the idea. And for here, I will probably create like this not connected lines for the contour line, which it's something that it's important to notice if you're trying to study like different textures and ways that different artists go about creating hair or different stuff even. Uh, where a lot of times we think of contour lines as something that has to be closed or connected, um, and obviously that's not the case. So even when using like contour lines, you can actually break those and use them and try to think of the character of the texture you will have. It will also be applied to the contour. And here I can actually start like maybe hinting on like these bulbous shapes that are being created from the hair curling, and I don't have to create like the same direction or the same curl every time, and I don't need to like really go into too much detail on none of them. I need to think like on the general shapes and the general patterns that I will achieve, uh, and that's mostly it. Sometimes I can approach like different style of curls, like in a way, like thinking of these bulbous shapes, like so, different types and sizes of like spheres. It's almost like spheres. So I'm creating like this texture, and then I can give like each one of them like a texture going in a different direction, and we all of a sudden like getting the feeling of curls, creating those little rounded bulbous masses. So even when I'm dealing with like creating like this very curly texture, I'm actually thinking on 3D shapes. I'm thinking, yeah, I have a ball, I have a sphere, and the sphere receives a texture in a certain direction. So then I create like the clue of a sphere here, and another one here, and another one here, and another one here. And each one of them get a texture, and I can go with a different direction on each one of them. I don't have to repeat like the exact same direction. That's what makes it so sporadic. Uh, and also, you don't have to fill the entire mess with this texture. You can actually find like the sweet spots. Usually it will be more to the sides and more close to the contour instead of actually getting the center mess. Maybe Sol, I'm about to wrap this up. So if we had something that we want to maybe add or say,
Yeah, I was just looking at the clock, and we are now just hitting our 2 hour mark here. Actually, we're a little bit over, technically speaking. So we've already taken a lot of your time, Udi. This lecture has been incredible. This is going to have so much great replay value, and for those that participated in Nexus Wins, the Dina 03, thank you for all of your contributions. Great stuff. It was really fun to watch the feedback that you're giving there on their sketches, and I think that will benefit tons of people that are going to be rewatching this as well. We are aware, of course, there are plenty of people across the globe that are in different time zones that would love to be here that just aren't able to at the time slots that we're running. So of course we're going to put this on blast and share this as much as possible. And Udi, this is really great. I wanted to say just the way that you're tackling this particular topic is incredibly engaging and fun to watch. It's even, I'm just picking up all kinds of things myself. I can only imagine what others will get from this. So thank you so much.
thank you. I had a great time as always, man. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Just a quick update. We will be running other streams this week. Udi is going to be on again in 2 weeks. That's going to be on the 28th of March. So we'll be dropping more information in there for anybody who's watching live. You can join our Discord, check in the description in YouTube, or pretty much anywhere you're watching the stream, you'll have information to join our Discord. And lastly, we'll be dropping a survey here in this video. So please give us feedback. If there's more that you'd love to see, particular topics or anything that comes to mind, feel free to let us know. And Udi, thanks again, man. And we'll catch you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Okay, cheers, everybody. Yep. Cheers.